First of all, my thanks to President Sassoli for his kind words, and also to you, Anthony, for helping to reinforce the ESPAS community over the past few years. It's crucial that we work together across the EU institutions and also with our partners to build a resilient union in the face of significant long-term challenges and palpable uncertainty. We cannot expect the future to become less disruptive. Recent months have taught us that we need to equip ourselves with the means to tackle whatever challenges may arise while keeping a political eye on any warning signs on the horizon. This is what the strategic foresight is about: anticipating, exploring, and ultimately acting in a collaborative manner. At the start of the mandate, even before COVID-19 emerged, President von der Leyen had asked me to lead our efforts to put strategic foresight at the heart of the EU policymaking. It now forms a part of our toolbox and helps us prepare major initiatives by keeping the long-term objective of boosting resilience at the core of our short-term decision-making across all policy areas. Before the pandemic, we were aware of the challenges posed by changing climate facing our liberal democracies or created by new technologies. COVID-19 has accelerated many of these megatrends. For instance, hyperconnectivity. As soon as the pandemic hit, over the third of the EU's labor force shifted to teleworking. Global internet traffic surged by almost 40% between February and mid-April. Meanwhile, the amount of data generated worldwide is set to grow to around 135 billion terabytes by 2025. And yet, we live in an attention economy. As a recent GRC study showed, our attention online is a precious commodity, and most of the information we consume is shaped and curated by algorithms. According to the same study, 48% of Europeans use social media daily or almost daily. While these platforms have revolutionized the way we experience politics by engaging more people, they also allow for the rapid dissemination of polarizing and unreliable information, and this negatively impacts our democracies. In fact, democracies are in the minority globally for the first time since 2001. According to the VDEM Institute, down from 55% of countries 10 years ago to 48% today. The competition between political systems is fiercer than ever. It should prompt us to carefully assess what our future partners, levers, options, and strategies will be. And this is just one example of a cross-cutting topic where strategic foresight can deepen our understanding of the dynamics at play across policy tracks. That's why resilience took center stage in the first Commission Annual Strategic Foresight Report adopted in September. It sought to identify what COVID-19 has taught us about Europe's geopolitical, green, digital, and social and economic resilience, where we are vulnerable, what capacities we have, and how to make the most of opportunities. But resilience cannot act as a policy compass without proper monitoring. Our report therefore proposed new prototype dashboards to be further developed with member states to assess and monitor resilience across the 4 dimensions. We need to be able to answer a simple question over time. Are our policies effectively making the EU more resilient? The next report will offer comprehensive new resilience dashboards, but it will also provide in-depth analysis on our open strategic autonomy, clarifying the concept, identifying strategic dependencies, and proposing ways to reduce them. This too is relevant across policy areas while making clear that we do not have a protectionist or anti-transatlantic agenda. Take our inability to counter India's recent export ban on 13 active pharmaceutical ingredients. This raises policy questions and a range of options related not only to trade, but also diversification of supply chains, intensifications of ties with key partners, increase of strategic reserves, reshoring of production, where and when necessary, development of substitutes through innovation, and so on and so on. Open strategic autonomy is defined by our ability to reduce dependencies and strengthen the security of supply of key strategic assets, while preserving the benefits of an open economy and supporting our partners around the globe. To boost Europe's open strategic autonomy, we need a long-term vision, whilst embarking on collaborative short-term actions such as launching industrial alliances in batteries, raw materials, or hydrogen, shaping global economic governance and multilateralism, or building a health union. It all requires a robust, dynamic, and comprehensive assessment of key criticalities and strategic pathways. I hope to work closely with all of you on this. Another forward-looking exercise I propose is twinning of the green and digital transition. For instance, we know the digital transformation currently has a carbon footprint price. Last year, data centers and data transmission networks accounted for some 2% of global electricity use. Digital technologies, however, could also help reduce global emissions by up to 15% through innovation in the manufacturing, building, agriculture, services, and transport sectors. Artificial intelligence and space technologies, notably Copernicus, our Earth observation system, can be deployed to greatly facilitate the green transition. The development of interoperable European cloud and edge infrastructure would reduce our digital energy needs while helping ensure the EU's technological sovereignty. In any case, new technologies will continue to have a huge impact on our societies. Many people are already looking to future steps forward, such as quantum computing. But can we assess where our competitive advantage lies and how best to exploit it? At the same time, it is crucial to ensure that we are not chasing technologies without addressing persisting problems, the skill gaps and the challenges of creating an innovation-friendly entrepreneurial environment in Europe. If we are seeking to shape the future of jobs, we need to take a systemic view of labor market shifts driven not only by the digital, but also the green transition, something largely missing now. This concerns low-tech as well as high-tech skills and should be addressed concurrently with our policies in education, a socially just transition, and legal migration. To make the overall picture clearer, we are developing a set of reference foresight scenarios on the future of the EU. We want to use these stress test policy ideas, assess our strengths and vulnerabilities, and reflect on which strategies we should apply going forward. The scenarios could even become an integral part of the conference on the future of Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, the European Commission is the first major public administration to bring strategic foresight into the highest political level. But if you want to succeed, it must be a truly collaborative exercise. With this in mind, I'm launching an EU-wide strategic foresight network, which will see EU institutions, member states, think tanks, academia, civil society, and international organizations joining forces. First, the network will help share best practices and build evidence-based anticipatory capacities in each member state. Second, we will work together on foresight projects of common interest. As I often say, foresight is not about the next election, but about the next generation. I very much look forward to working with you on this important endeavor in the months and years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Vice President Šefčovič, and thank you for that very important announcement and for upgrading and taking so seriously foresight issues in the EU political system. Now, at this stage, the Vice President has invited Jyrki Katainen, former Prime Minister of Finland, former Vice President of the European Commission in the last Commission where he was responsible for jobs, for growth, for investment and competitiveness, to say a few words about how he sees the process of embedding strategic foresight in policymaking and what best practice we might want to draw on. Over to you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, dear Vice President Šefčovič, dear Maroš, Mesdames, Messieurs. Thank you very much for having me in this very, very fascinating event. Let me first say a couple of words on Sitra, my current organization. Sitra is Think, Do and Connect Tank, which concentrates currently on circular economy. Also, we try to explore new market-based solution for improving biodiversity. We also concentrate on fair data economy and democracy. Especially, we look at democracy through modern technology glasses. So there is a rich transition of foresight for policy in Finland, but also elsewhere. And we can definitely learn from it. But we also need to challenge our understanding of what foresight is and what works in the current situation. We have moved to post-normal times where, like Vice President Šefčovič mentioned, complexity, chaos, and contradictions have become the dominant themes, and uncertainty and ignorance have increased drastically. In other words, this is a time of transition also for foresight. What then are the key transitions needed in foresight? First, we must move from knowing the future to humility and seeing uncertainty as a welcome thing. We need to shift from emphasizing projections and predictions to understanding the tensions of megatrends and uncertainties in present and how they might impact the future. I give you a couple of examples of potential or most obvious tensions. For instance, when looking at digital technology, it's everywhere and it's part of everything, and it will create lots of positive opportunities, but also it will have some negative impacts. So what is the tension and how we handle the tension between progressive development and negative side effects? Second obvious example is nature loss or biodiversity loss versus economic growth and consumption patterns. So there will be lots of societal challenges coming or rising from this tension. And how we decouple economic growth from excessive use of natural resources and what kind of implications it will have to our society. And finally, I would raise the freedom of speech, hate speech, mis and disinformation versus freedom of speech. This tension may have many different types of implications to societal cohesion and trust. So this requires really a certain level of humility in accepting that there will be surprises. But humility and uncertainty does not mean inaction. Uncertainty is an opportunity, and it means that the future is open. What we have chose now influences the range of possible futures, like what we have seen happening in the middle of the corona crisis. I would say that societal tectonic plates are unleashed, and one can push them to new direction, and it will have either positive or negative implications to our future. In practice, this shift in foresight means enhancing future literature on all levels, from schools to decision makers. In Sitra, we have emphasized the importance of interpreting our popular megatrend and weak signals materials and provided tools and canvases for doing that. Currently, we are working on popularizing future-oriented thinking and change-making skills in the particular Future Makers project. Our aim is to increase citizens' understanding on possible futures and also help decision makers to build a joint outlook of potential futures. Secondly, when looking at what transition is needed in foresight, we need to move from colonizing futures to discussions and plurality. Participation and inclusion are ever more important in strategic foresight. What are preferable futures and to whom? Who is present and presented in foresight exercises and whose voice is heard? The future belongs to everyone, yet it is often discussed and imagined in small and closed circles. This not only means that those left out might be alienated from the visions of future that inspire those who made them. It also means that many surprises and developments are not considered. In practice, this can mean having more constructive dialogues and spaces for discussing futures, all linked to decision making. For example, in Finland, there have been a series of future dialogues by the Finnish government as part of the government's report on the future. The aim is not to arrive at a consensus, but to understand others better. It is also good to break the silos and have discussions within the government between different ministries. The Finnish government is now running a joint scenario process that does justice. And thirdly, we need to move from maintaining the past to refusing the normal and leaping into future. Many current ways of doing things are not sustainable. We should not aim to go back to that normal. Instead, we should actively refuse it. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that change can be scary. This anxiety towards uncertain futures can be alleviated by taking a bold leap into futures, emphasizing the opportunities that exist and imagining where they might lead us. We need to think long term, not just the next 5 to 10 years, but in terms of generations. What kind of world do we want to leave to our children and grandchildren? For example, the next Finnish government report on the future is titled Finland for the Next Generation. Let me finish by saying a couple of words on the EU Foresight Network. What we have learned from the Finnish National Foresight Network is that the network needs to be both open and orchestrated. It needs to be open and accessible to all stakeholders and to be forum for connecting different actors to think together about futures. In practice, this means that the events are open and public, and events are organized jointly by many actors. Ideally, it forms a vibrant ecosystem of foresight. However, the network also needs to have a clear orchestration and to be connected to decision making. In Finland, the network is coordinated by the Prime Minister's office, and there's a core group consisting of ministries, Academy of Finland, Business Finland, and Sitra, which further develops the network's activities. Clear orchestration and connection to arenas of decision making give the network credibility and motivates others to join in its activities. Like we all remember, previous Commission published a white paper of Future of Europe with 4 scenarios. It functioned as a good basis for thinking different possible futures for the EU. And it also triggered imagination and challenged people to think, what do they want from Europe? What is possible and what is possible threat? Ladies and gentlemen, as we know, EU is united in diversity, and that's why also the weak signals in one member state are interesting and important as phenomena goes easily across the border. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Katainen. Much appreciated. Now, at this stage, we're going to move to a series of video messages which have been sent in 4 cases by national ministers, and in one case it's international institution. And the first one we move to is Peter Altmaier, who's the Federal Minister of the Economy and Energy in Germany since 2018. He was previously acting Minister for Finance and Minister in the Federal Chancellor's Office. Peter Altmaier.
Dear Maroš, Šefčovič, ladies and gentlemen, Dear friends, Germany has already been using strategic foresight as an instrument of prospective studies for quite some time. From an economic policy perspective, it is particularly important to be able to assess not only the effects of demographic change, but also today the prospects and the effects of digitization. Hardly anyone today can foresee the future applications and complex interactions of technologies like artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, big data, or quantum computers. For this reason, we at the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy have initiated a strategic foresight process on the economic policy prospects of digitization in Germany. Like most strategic foresight processes, the intention of our study is to learn more about complex future developments. What is possible? What are desirable outcomes? How can we achieve them? And how can we avoid detrimental effects? Issues include, for example, changes in production processes, data ownership, liability aspects of autonomous systems, and competition law issues relating to digital platforms. The fundamental questions behind all these are: what are the implications of digitization for the future of the social market economy, and how should we reshape the economic policy framework? In this regard, we greatly appreciate the first strategic foresight report by the European Commission, entitled Charting the Course Towards a More Resilient Europe, which was published this year. The report addresses a particularly topical issue: resilience. We have repeatedly raised this issue in the course of our presidency, especially with a view to securing and strengthening internal and external industrial competitiveness. We have already taken note of a consensus at Council level to create an informal Ministers of the Future network, supported at technical level by national foresight capacities. It is now important to start work on the structure so that we can achieve the intended goals. I wish you all a very fruitful conference and stay healthy.
Thank you very much indeed. Next up is the Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sánchez. He's been Prime Minister since 2018, and he has sent this message.
Europe needs a plan for the future, today more than ever. The pandemic has clouded many of our hopes, redefined our priorities, and accelerated many transformations that were already underway. And it is precisely in this context of change and uncertainty that we Europeans need to come together and craft a vision for the future. A vision that must go beyond the realms of technological innovation and environmental sustainability, taking into consideration every dimension of our societies. This new vision should ensure a prosperous economy and a well-functioning democracy. We need a long-term plan, and the best tool we have to illuminate the crafting of that plan is strategic foresight. If the last few months have taught us anything, it is that member states can no longer rely on the traditional methods of policymaking and crisis management. We need to strengthen our capacity for evidence-based anticipatory governance so as to be able to get ahead of events instead of being overtaken by them. I firmly believe this. This is why earlier this year we created the Spanish Office of Foresight and Strategy, a unit based within the Office of the Presidency's cabinet, formed by an interdisciplinary team of analysts who work closely with other state departments. The office has already provided valuable support to our administration at the outbreak of the pandemic, and now is completing the first draft of Spain 2050, a national long-term strategy co-authored by over 100 experts that analyze how future trends will affect Spain in the coming decades and what our country could do to turn them into opportunities for further progress and welfare. This strategy has a double purpose: to inspire optimism for the distant future and to steer action in the immediate present. because the current transformations are becoming more important than ever to achieve the future that we need and deserve. Of course, my country, Spain, won't be able to achieve these goals alone. That is why I find the European Foresight Network that Vice President Šefčovič is leading so timely and necessary to project the Europe to come. Europe needs to look forward and address jointly its common future. Together is the only way to tackle the challenges we are facing, because we're stronger together. And in doing so, you can count on us. Thank you. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister, for that important message. And next we go to Vienna, where Karoline Edtstadler, the Federal Minister for the European Union and the Constitution, has sent us this message.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'm more than happy to participate in this conference today, even if it is only virtually. I think it's very important to encourage continuous exchange, especially in these difficult times. I would like to share some thoughts on the European Foresight Network, as especially the pandemic has shown that it is of high importance to be prepared and resilient. It is crucial to respond in time to new developments in an ever more complex world. This has already been a high priority for Austria even before the pandemic. Hence, a strategy unit directly linked to the Chancellor was established in 2018 called Think Austria. Its task is to monitor global trends and to provide the Austrian government with evidence-based policy ideas and recommendations to address pressing issues of the future. Moreover, it is crucial to keep a permanent exchange with national and international experts, as this is a vital source to identify and elaborate best solutions. This is the reason why I, as a Minister for Europe, have started the so-called Österreich-Dialoge. I traveled already once to all the regions of Austria, in total we do have 9 regions, in order to collect ideas from citizens and relevant stakeholders. It is an ongoing process. At the moment, I'm doing that exchange in a digital way. The COVID-19 crisis has shown Europe's need for more resilience in order to overcome future crises. With the first European Foresight Report, the Commission has identified important areas in which strategic foresight can contribute. It is important to strengthen Europe's global competitiveness and strategic autonomy. The creation of globally competitive framework conditions is central and necessary. Moreover, the important contribution of strategic foresight to develop future-oriented analysis, especially in connection with strategies for cooperation and partnerships, are key. Digital technologies play a central role as game changers in green transition. Therefore, the focus on digitalization of the industry is essential, for example, artificial intelligence, robotics. I'm convinced that Europe's vulnerabilities and capacities must be better identified. That is the reason why I'm actively advocating for the start of the Conference on the Future of Europe, and strategic foresight should play an important part in that process. Support for initiatives at international level, UNESCO COVID-19 crisis foresees us to exchange on how we deal with the future. We have the need to become better in understanding how we use the future. This capability is called Futures Literacy, pioneered by UNESCO. Futures Literacy augments our ability to imagine the future, taking us beyond prediction to embrace novelty and transformation. Within UNESCO, we have taken the lead by creating a group of friends on futures literacy. Thereby, we are helping the UNESCO Secretariat preparing for a high-level Futures Literacy Summit that will take place virtually from the 8th to the 12th of December. The summit aims to demonstrate that futures literacy is a key competence for resilience and transformation. I'm looking forward to participate in this conference called Futures Conversations. Austria has a long history of learning from change and grasping the power of new ideas to enable transformation. Past, present, and future are connected. We know how to put the past in perspective, make use of its lessons while taking advantage of the unexpected to invent entirely new opportunities. The aim is to give people the capability to be able to imagine their future and thereby feel empowered to shape their own future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Edtstadler. And of course, some of you will recall her from being in the European Parliament, where she was a member until earlier this year. Now we go to Lisbon. Ana Paula Zacarias, the Secretary of State for European Affairs in the Portuguese government, a role that she has performed since 2017.
Good morning. Greetings from Lisbon, where we are actively preparing the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union starting on January 1st, 2021. We're doing this work in the midst of the uncertainties that the COVID-19 pandemic brought into our daily lives, to the health of our fellow citizens, with their consequences at the socio-economic level. We know it's time to act, time to be positive and work together to develop a vaccine and push for Europe's economic recovery. It's time to join efforts and take the right political decisions. To do this, we need to have information. We need to have encompassing long-term strategic vision. We need the foresight instruments that can help us navigate our way into the future. ESPAS has become a landmark when it comes to providing this type of analysis. And this year, the conference will open with a presentation of the European Commission's first ever and more needed than ever Annual Strategic Foresight Report. Thank you, Vice President Maroš Šefčovič, for your work. In Portugal, we learned a thing or two about coming out of a crisis and reinventing ourselves. We learned that only by putting people at the center of our policies can we build the necessary trust for our society to move forward. We'll face then our semester as a time to act. We believe that cohesion, convergence, and competitiveness should play a central role in shaping our future policies. Our program, in line with our trio partners, will be devoted to 5 main priorities: resilience, social, green, digital, and global Europe. And people will be at the center of our work, pushing Europe's economic and social recovery. We want the Portuguese presidency to bring added value by putting the focus on the social agenda. We'll only be able to overcome the challenge of the double transition, climate and digital, while anchored at the European social model, putting into action the European pillar of social rights. This is why we will be holding a social summit in May in Porto to push this agenda forward, involving governments, the European institutions, social partners, and academia. Discussions like the ones this forum will have today will grant us the means to work in a more coordinated way in building this resilient, sustainable, innovative social Europe that we all want. We count on you. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister Zacarias from Portugal. And before we move to in conversation with Vice President Šefčovič on strategic foresight, where he'll be talking with Michael Peel of the Financial Times, we have a final video message from Paris, from Angel Gurria, the Secretary General of the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, a role he has performed since 2006.
Vice President Šefčovič, colleagues, participants, dear friends, I am pleased to join you today for the opening of this important conference. I would like to congratulate the administration of President von der Leyen for the renewed and significant commitment it made to strengthen strategic foresight across EU institutions and member states. I commend also Vice President Šefčovič, who has played a key role in leading the foresight activity and the collaboration. In an era of rapid change and of high uncertainty, strategic foresight is essential to design, develop, and deliver better policies for better lives. It is only by expanding our understanding of the future that we will perceive broader possibilities and design truly innovative solutions. Never has foresight been more important than in the current context? The global pandemic is a historic challenge with unprecedented health, social, and economic consequences. Yet, with it also comes a unique opportunity to build back better. Billions will be spent on the recovery, perhaps trillions. The design of these investments and of these policy reforms, supported by the EU, will have consequences for decades. So we must use foresight to help future-proof our recovery plans. At the OECD, we are working tirelessly to support our members and the international community in their response to the crisis, including the need to design recovery efforts in light of a wide range of possible future scenarios. I would like to congratulate you for the formation of the new European Member States Foresight Network. A reinvigorated European network will be a valuable addition to global foresight. As you know, for a number of years, the OECD has hosted the Global Government Foresight Community. It is made up of strategic foresight practitioners in the public sector from around the world. Informal and highly participatory networks generate tremendous benefits in strengthening foresight capacity and enabling joint work on common priorities. Now, the OECD is fully committed to an evolving collaboration with the European Commission across our many areas of shared interests. Now, we join our efforts again to imagine and build a brighter future, to build back better, to build a strong, inclusive, resilient, sustainable recovery. So let's do it. I wish you all productive exchanges and good, foresighted discussions. I wish you a successful conference and beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gurria. We now move back to the European Commission, where Vice President Šefčovič will be in conversation.
Mr. Šefčovič, thanks for being here. We've heard from a number of politicians about the importance of foresight. What I'd like you to do, I think, is to explain what is foresight. This is a new job. What does it mean to be Vice President for Foresight? And does this mean that the Commission was not acting with foresight until 1 year ago?
I think for me, foresight means that it's really thinking about tomorrow, today. And actually, the Commission was working with the foresight already in the past. It was very famous President of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, who set up at that time the Prospective Strategic, which was such a first foresight unit, but it was used more, I would say, in piecemeal approach. And what our President, Ursula von der Leyen, very much wanted is that we would really base our policies on evidence, on really foresighting and developing the future scenarios. And with giving me this new task, she also asked me that I should do my utmost that we would mainstream foresight not only into the policy cycle, but also to all flagship initiatives. So the fact that we are working now on a regular basis, and after this first ever Strategic Foresight Report will be coming every year with, I would say, the topic which we believe foresight community should look at. We are also contributing to all flagship projects and initiatives with a very important foresight element, which means that our proposals would be more future-proof than in past. And my other capacity, I'm also responsible for better regulation. So we want to use also the foresight when we would be revising and looking at all the directives, all the regulations which we adopted over the past years, and making them again better equipped for the future developments. And I think what would be very important right now, because all the intervenants, the Prime Minister, ministers and Secretary General of the OECD, been referring to how these changes to theirs are dynamic, how the new technologies are almost arriving every day. And therefore, we're also looking for the ways how we can keep the pace with the technological change, how we can follow our strategic guidelines, meaning that we want to benefit at the maximum from the green and digital transformation, and also use the current crisis for making Europe more resilient. So I would say this is, in a nutshell, the area which we want to cover. And I have to say that we have very enthusiastic response, not only from my colleagues in the Commission, the commissioners, the services, but also, as we can see, from the member states, from the academia. And we want to use this goodwill, this interest, and this positive energy for really taking maximum advantage of foresight.
Is there a limit to how effective you can be, though? Because to take the pandemic as an example, the idea that there would be a pandemic like this at some point was quite well known. Lots of people talked about it. But of course, one of the particular problems at the European level has been that the major competences, health, national security, and so on, are still very much with member states. And so the role and the powers of the Commission are quite limited. I mean, aren't there much bigger questions here about whether countries want more or less Europe?
I think the concrete example of pandemia is one. We can also cite another example over the migration or even the financial crisis. I mean, the signs been there, and I know that foresight community been debating it already for some time. But what was missing was, I would say, bringing these concerns, I would say, this horizon scan, this writing on the wall to the political level, and therefore. We speak in the Commission and in my portfolio about strategic foresight. And strategic for me means acting. So if there are clear signs that something is brewing on the horizon, that I'm there to inform my colleagues to start the action, to understand that phenomenon better, and to prepare, of course, with the colleagues, the action plan, how to deal with the potential crises. And I think this is very important, and that was something what was missing. And if it comes to the competencies, you have seen that also in this health crisis, that there was a clear understanding from the member states that to deal with pandemia of this scale more efficiently, we need to coordinate better. We have to cooperate in more concerted way, and therefore we came with a proposal of the health union. We can do it within the current treaties, with the current competencies, and I was debating that proposal also yesterday with the Europe ministers in the General Affairs Council, and there is really the general support for that. So I think that this is just one proof to show that very often the crisis is pushing the Europe towards stronger togetherness, to better coordination. And I think that treaties are really offering us a lot of possibilities how we can deal with the issues more efficiently. And the Health Union is a concrete example how we can do that.
One of the other areas you've identified is supply chains, and within that, and clearly there are other people in the Commission also working on this. Within that, this ranges from everything from pharmaceuticals, so very closely related to the pandemic, to much bigger industrial questions about the supply of raw materials. Now, clearly there are big questions about the extent to which this is about diversity of chains, the extent to which this is about bringing production back back to Europe. And there are clearly concerns that have already been raised that, for example, the environmental impact of more mining or, more big pharma factories making drugs on a massive scale in the EU could conflict with other EU ambitions on, for example, the environment. I mean, do you think that these tensions are going to just grow? And if so, how do you deal with them?
I think that you rightly pointed out the issue of European resilience. I think, this was the first lesson learned from this first 3 months of COVID crisis, where we realized how vulnerable the Europe could be if the supply chains and transport routes are disrupted or interrupted. And therefore, we also devoted our first strategic foresight report to the resilience. And I think one of the key conclusions from that exercise was that we need more strategic autonomy in Europe. We need more economic of political sovereignty for the European Union. And it also is bringing the examples how much we can achieve together if we really focus our minds on what we want to accomplish. As you know, I'm heading the European Battery Alliance, and it was a little bit such anticipated foresight exercise when we started with the alliance 3 years ago, just simply not to be dependent on the supply of such a key technology as batteries, especially in the time where we want to transform the whole mobility sector in the European Union. Same applies for the critical raw materials. I was working in the previous commission on the energy security and how it was important to diversify the number of suppliers of fossil fuels. And I just really wouldn't like to see that this dependency would be replaced by the dependency on critical raw materials, which are getting mostly from China or from companies which are already controlled by China. Therefore, we came with the Alliance for Critical Raw Materials, and we see it as a very good model for other key technologies we want to develop, like for hydrogen. So I think that in the course of the next year, because the theme for the next strategic foresight report should be open strategic autonomy, where we want to study this issue in a great detail. What is the lessons learned? What is the state of our global value chains? What we can do to make sure that we would have more autonomy of our action in the political and economic field, and upon what we have to focus. So I'm sure that this is very, very exciting topic, because I see already the debate very much brewing on this issue, and therefore I'm sure that we would profit a lot when we get the best scientific and foresight minds focusing on this issue for the next year.
And do you think, are you confident that there is sufficient cooperation and trust between member states on this? Because if you're going to take an EU view of certain raw materials, well, you can see the logic of that, but in the end, these are physical factories, physical facilities, and they will have to be in country X or country Y. One of the lessons of the pandemic we saw at the start was that countries in an emergency, they very quickly introduced export limits, they shut borders, and this created tensions between them and with the European Commission. I mean, how are you going to get it to a state where you can get member states to have that confidence in each other to say, yeah, just because the factory is in this country, it will serve the whole of the EU, even in an emergency?
Yeah, a very concrete example I can just to make it I would say even more vivid is the issue of lithium. I mean, thanks to our foresight exercise, we calculated quite precisely that we would need 18 times more lithium in 2030 than today, and 60 times more in 2050. And on top of it, we also discovered that we have quite substantial reserves of lithium in Europe, in Spain, in Portugal, in France, and in Czech Republic. And that if we would be able to proceed with the mining and add very important element which is missing right now in Europe, and this is actually refineries for the lithium, because currently they're only in China.
Yeah.
So then we can cover more than half of the lithium demand just from our own sources. You're absolutely right that from one side, there is enormous interest from the business community, from the government, but we know that for the projects of this type, we clearly need to work very hard for public acceptance. And I think you can achieve it only if the local population see the benefit in having or the mine or the refinery, I mean, in this region. And there is a lot of argumentation needed to convince the people in this region that what we are talking about now, that's mining of the 21st century, that we would respect all standards if it comes to environment, and are highest in the world. That the local community must have clearly the benefit from that, and that this is actually something by which this region will really get on the map of the very important global suppliers of the precious materials which will be needed for all the future technologies which we want to develop. So I think that the trust is always very important to earn, and we can earn it only when we will be very transparent, open, and state from the beginning that we aim at the highest standards from the labor point of view, from the environmental standards, and also from the high-tech angle. And I think you will see all those intentions really put together in the battery regulation, which we are currently working on, and I hope that we will adopt it before the end of this year.
And can you give us a bit of a preview of that? What will you be trying to do with that regulation?
I think, to put it in one sentence, we want to make sure that the batteries which would be placed on European market would be the greenest, the safest, and the most performant on the planet. It means that we want to cover the whole value chain, from sustainable mining through development of the software, which would work very well with all the legislation being passed in the last years, with integrating renewable energy. Then, of course, the reuse, recycle, and we want to make sure that we would include also the passport for these batteries, and also very strong demands on recycle, reuse, and carbon footprint. So I think that all that trends which we are supporting in this twin green and digital revolution would be reflected in this battery regulation. And I believe that we are aiming at such a top quality that the battery regulation which we are proposing will become the global standard for, as I said, safest, most performant, and most sustainable batteries.
And can you give us a sense in concrete terms of some of the other questions you're looking at, particularly perhaps questions that aren't linked to the pandemic? Because, of course, the danger is, I guess, that as everybody focuses understandably on the immediate health crisis, there are other things going on that also need to be addressed.
I think that the issue which is coming across from all trends of economy are skills. So we are really going to prepare such a partial reports next year on what kind of skills do we need in Europe, what it means if we are talking about green jobs. We are talking about high-tech jobs, but also about low-tech jobs, which are also important for Europe. And we are also going to, I would say, deepen our scientific assessment of all the new jobs which are really on the horizon, because we know very well that top 10 jobs of today didn't exist just 5 years ago. And when I'm asking especially the industrialists from these future-oriented technologies, how do you feel in Europe? What are you missing? So they are not missing the investment opportunities. So they are also very, very, very pleased with the labor standards, with the environment, with the infrastructure. They are telling me that there is only one limiting factor, and this might be in a very short period the lack of skilled workforce. So I think that we need to adjust the way how we are preparing, especially the young people, for these jobs of the future. And if we do it well, we will have the guarantee that Europe will continue to have the best trained, best educated workforce, and that they will be having the high value-added jobs, which I think one of the goals of European social economy. So that would be, I think, the major challenge: how to improve the curricula in the primary schools, in the high schools, at the universities, to make sure that our people are well prepared for these new jobs, and that we would improve also our reskilling and upskilling programs for the labor force of today to be really prepared for all these opportunities of tomorrow.
So what kind of skills are missing, are you told, by business people? I think
what I hear a lot, this is mechanical engineering, chemistry. These are, I would say, all the skills required for artificial intelligence implementations. And I would say all the skills which are somehow linked to the subjects which are not super popular, especially among the young people, if it comes to physics, to chemistry, to mathematics. And I think that we just have to learn how to teach these subjects to the young people in a more attractive way, that they would actually like to study them, that they would not be afraid of them. And I think this would be the challenge for all of us. If you want to be successful in this green and digital transition, we also have to do the same, I would say, revolution and this deep transformation of how we educate our people and how we offer them the new opportunities to get these new skills which are required.
And what can the Commission do there that national governments cannot? And what ability does the Commission have even to get involved in this?
I think that we have something which I called the convening power of the Commission, and we are still in the position which is unquestionable by anyone, that we are regulatory superpower. And I think these are two very important qualities. And what I have seen we have done with the European Battery Alliance to get around one table 500 of the top companies from the field to work with them on what would be the best stage approach. How can we really get the work done on different stages in the whole production, and how to draw the lessons which we can share then with the national governments, with the key industrial stakeholders, with educational institutions. I think that's something which only European Union and European Commission can do on the European scale. And I have seen that what kind of positive dynamics we have started, and we started with smart specializations of the regions. So we have currently more than 20 regions which are specializing in certain skills, in certain productions, if it comes to the batteries. And I think this is something what we can do in much wider scale. And I know that my very good colleague Thierry Breton is using this blueprint for the formulation of this new industrial strategy for Europe, and therefore we are using the same approach, as I said, for critical raw materials, for hydrogen. I'm sure that we will have other alliances, especially in the field of IT and artificial intelligence.
We're running out of time, so I think this will be the last question. But I'd just like to pick up on your point about Europe or the EU as a regulatory superpower. I mean, this is obviously a very common idea. It's said a lot, and clearly the EU has been very influential in past decades. But are you concerned that actually that influence could be slipping, as, for example, China takes a lot more interest in standard setting and getting a role in global standard setting bodies, and also that the EU is getting left behind in some of the frontier areas, for example, artificial intelligence? I mean, is the superpower status slipping away?
I don't think so, because Europe has become this regulatory superpower not only because of the process and the size of the European market, but because of, I would say, the trademark feature of the European regulation, which guarantees the highest quality. So it was not only adopted by our member states, but very often by global value chains, because if they wanted to market their product somewhere else outside of the European market, I would say if the, let's say, global consumer population have seen that this is manufactured according to the European standards, they always knew that they are going for the highest of the quality, for the best protected trademarks and safest, for example, food, toys, or any other product. So I think that if we continue, and I'm sure we will, to aim for highest quality, for highest consumer protection, I think we shouldn't worry about losing the status. But you're right that in all the areas where we need to speed up, we have to do it, and clearly the aim to have the next decade being the European digital one aims exactly at that, to catch up and to overcome the gaps we might have in certain fields of the digital technologies.
And before we go, any final areas that are on your mind just now that viewers should know about?
I think that I mean this new world is very exciting. Almost every day we are faced with the new technologies. I think a lot we will be hearing from the biomedicine research. Therefore, we are going to establish the special agency for advanced biomedical research. I think we will hear a lot about nanotechnologies, and we will hear also a lot about space technologies and how we can use them in enhancing our green and digital ambitions, and also about the new materials, which I think will be very important for the areas of the smart mobility, for the aviation. And I think that definitely, if it comes to the fuels, I'm sure the future will bring us a lot of different solutions which we are not aware of right now. And I think that therefore we need such a dynamic labor force, because I'm sure that the nature of the jobs as we know them today will be evolving in very rapid pace, and therefore I think we need to have our young people up to the challenge and up to the almost permanent change.
Vice President Šefčovič, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.